The warning alarm screamed through Kepler Station for the 100th time that day. Commander Juan pressed his scaled hands against the metal railing of the command deck and watched the displays show more bad news. Red dots filled the screen like angry stars. Each dot was a Vextai warship, and there were too many to count. "How many this time?" Juan asked his second officer. 57 new ships dropped out of hyperspace in the last hour, the young Xanthari officer replied. His blue skin had turned pale with fear. "That brings their total fleet to over 3,000 vessels." Juan closed his 4 eyes and tried to think. 3,000 enemy ships against their 60 remaining defenders. The math was simple and brutal. They were going to die. The space station shook again as another wave of plasma bolts hit their shields. Through the thick windows, Juan could see the energy barriers flickering like dying flames. The shields had held for 3 months, but they were failing now. Each hit made them weaker. "Sir, we're getting reports from all sections," called out Communications Officer Nara from her station. Her purple Lumway tentacles moved quickly over the controls. "Deck 7 lost atmosphere again. Medical bay is full. Food stores are down to 2 days." The station shook harder this time. Somewhere in the lower levels, metal screamed as it bent and broke. Emergency lights flashed red, making everything look like it was covered in blood. Juan looked around the command center at his mixed crew. Xanthari officers with their blue skin and forearms worked alongside the gray-skinned Drakmor warriors. A few Lumway sat at psychic communication posts, their tentacles glowing softly as they tried to coordinate the defense. All of them looked tired. All of them knew they were going to lose. The Vextai had been hunting them across the galaxy for 2 years. Planet after planet had fallen to their massive fleets. Colonies that had stood for centuries were now empty rocks floating in space. Billions of people had died or disappeared into Vextai prison ships. Kepler Station was supposed to be safe. It orbited a dying red star in the outer rim where nobody ever went. The Coalition had hidden their last ships here and hoped the enemy would not find them. That hope died 3 months ago when Vextai scouts arrived. "Commander, incoming message from the Vextai flagship," Nara announced. Her voice was steady, but Juan could see the fear in her large black eyes. "Put it through," Juan ordered. The main screen filled with the image of a Vextai war leader. The creature looked like a giant insect with too many arms and teeth like broken glass. Its voice sounded like metal scraping against stone. "Coalition defenders, this is War Commander Zethkar of the Vextai 4th Fleet. Your shields will fail within 6 hours. Your weapons cannot harm our ships. Your people will die slowly unless you surrender now." Juan stepped forward. "This is Commander Juan of the Galactic Defense Coalition. We will never surrender to murderers and slavers." The Vextai leader made a sound that might have been laughter. "Brave words from dead aliens. When your station falls, we will take your survivors to the processing centers. The strong will work in our mines until they die. The weak will feed our young. The smart ones will wish they had died quickly." The screen went dark. Around the command center, the mixed crew of aliens looked at each other with hopeless eyes. They all knew what Vextai processing centers meant. Nobody came back from those places. "Sir," called out a Drakmor warrior from the weapons station, "our heavy guns are down to 30% power. The fighters are out of missiles. We can't hold them off much longer." Juan nodded slowly. He had known this moment would come. They all had. The Coalition had fought bravely for 2 years, but the Vextai were just too strong. Their ships were bigger, their weapons were more powerful, and they had billions of soldiers who felt no fear and showed no mercy. The station shook again, harder this time. A support beam fell from the ceiling and crashed near the navigation station. Sparks flew from damaged control panels. The air smelled like smoke and fear. "Commander, we're detecting massive power buildup in the enemy fleet," reported the sensor officer. "They're charging their planet-killer weapons. All of them." Juan felt his heart sink. Planet-killer weapons were exactly what they sounded like. The Vextai used them to destroy entire worlds when they wanted to make examples. If they were charging those weapons, it meant no surrender would be accepted. They planned to destroy the station and everyone on it. "How long until they fire?" Juan asked. 4 hours, maybe 5. 4 hours to live." Juan thought about his family back on Xanthari Prime. If it still existed. The Vextai had attacked the core world 6 months ago, and there had been no word since then. For all he knew, his people were already dead or enslaved. "Sir, incoming transmission," Nara called out. Her tentacles had stopped glowing, which meant the psychic communication networks were down. "It's not from the Vextai. Unknown origin, heavy encryption. Put it through." The speakers crackled with static. Then a voice came through, speaking in clear galactic standard language. The accent was strange, unlike any species Juan knew. Kepler Station, this is Terran Colonial Marines. We are inbound to your location. Prepare for unconventional tactical support. Do not surrender to hostile forces. Help is coming. The command center fell silent. Everyone stared at the speakers like they had just heard a ghost speak. Terran, whispered the sensor officer. I've never heard of that species. Neither had Juan. In 40 years of military service, he thought he knew every species in the galaxy. The databases showed no record of any Terrans or their territory. Nara, try to respond, Juan ordered. I'm trying, sir, but the signal is gone. Whatever sent it is using technology I don't recognize. Another blast hit the station. This time the lights went out for several seconds before the emergency power kicked in. When they came back on, half the control panels were dark. Structural integrity down to 40%, reported the engineering station. We're losing hull plating on decks 12 through 15. Juan looked out at the Vextai fleet surrounding them. Thousands of dark ships filled the space around Kepler Station like hungry sharks. Their weapons glowed with deadly energy, ready to finish the kill. He thought about the strange message. Terran Colonial Marines, unconventional tactical support. It had to be some kind of mistake or trick. No unknown species could stand against the Vextai war machine. The Coalition had tried for 2 years with the best weapons and ships in the galaxy, and they had lost everything. But something in that voice had sounded different. Not afraid. Not desperate like every other Coalition transmission he had heard in the past 2 years. The voice had sounded confident, almost eager. Sir, we're detecting new hyperspace signatures. The sensor officer called out suddenly. 3 ships, unknown design, approaching fast. Vextai reinforcements? Juan asked, though he knew it didn't matter anymore. No, sir, the energy patterns are completely different. These ships? I've never seen anything like them. On the screen, 3 dark shapes dropped out of hyperspace. They were smaller than Vextai destroyers, but moved with deadly grace. Their hulls were black as space itself, and they radiated energy signatures that made the station's sensors struggle to get clear readings. The Vextai fleet noticed them too. Several enemy ships turned their weapons toward the newcomers, but the 3 strange ships didn't seem concerned. They moved toward Kepler Station like they owned the space around it. Incoming transmission from the lead vessel, Nara announced. Put it through. The voice was the same one from before, calm, professional, and strangely cold. Kepler Station, this is Colonel Tejo of the Human Colonial Marines. We're here to even the odds, requesting permission to dock and coordinate tactical operations with Coalition forces. Human. That was a species name Juan had never heard, but something about the way this Colonel Tejo spoke made the commander's skin crawl. There was no fear in that voice, no doubt. Only a quiet certainty that chilled Juan to his bones. The Vextai were about to learn what that certainty meant. The human ships moved through space like predators stalking prey. Commander Juan watched the sensors track their approach to Kepler Station. The 3 vessels were sleek and dark, their hulls absorbing light instead of reflecting it. They looked nothing like any ship in the galactic database. Sir, the Vextai fleet is reacting, reported the sensor officer. 12 enemy ships are moving to intercept the newcomers. Juan expected to see the human ships turn away or call for help. Any sane captain would avoid a fight against overwhelming odds. Instead, the lead human vessel sent another transmission. Kepler Station, this is Colonel Tejo. We'll handle the welcoming committee. Please prepare docking bay 7 for our arrival in 20 minutes. 20 minutes. The Vextai interceptors would reach the human ships in 5. Should we warn them? Asked Communications Officer Nara. Her purple tentacles twitched with nervousness. Before Juan could answer, the human ships opened fire, but their weapons were unlike anything he had ever seen. Instead of the bright energy beams used by most species, the humans fired what looked like solid projectiles. Streams of metal slugs flew toward the Vextai ships at incredible speed. The first enemy vessel took a hit and simply came apart. Not exploded, not vaporized, just broke into pieces like it was made of glass. The metal slugs had punched through its armor like it wasn't even there. What kind of weapons are those? Whispered the weapons officer. The second human ship fired something different. A bright pulse of energy struck another Vextai vessel. For a moment, nothing seemed to happen. Then the enemy ship's lights went out. It drifted dead in space, its crew probably suffocating in the dark. The third human ship did something even stranger. It fired a spread of small objects that looked like missiles, but instead of exploding when they hit the Vextai ships, they seemed to burrow into the hulls. Seconds later, the enemy vessels began firing at each other. "They've taken control of the Vextai weapon systems," Nara said in amazement. "That's impossible." In less than 3 minutes, all 12 Vextai interceptors were either destroyed or disabled. The human ships hadn't taken a single hit. They continued toward Kepler Station like nothing had happened. The command center fell silent. Around the galaxy, the Vextai were feared as the greatest military force ever seen. Their ships were massive, their armor was nearly indestructible, and their crews never retreated. But these humans had just destroyed a dozen of them like they were training targets. "Sir, incoming message from the Vextai command ship," Nara reported. "War Commander Zethkar wants to speak with you." The main screen showed the insect-like Vextai leader. Its multiple eyes were wide with what might have been shock. When it spoke, its voice had lost some of its earlier confidence. "Coalition Commander, what are those ships? What species command such weapons?" "I honestly don't know," Juan replied. "It was the truth. Find out. Now. Or we will destroy your station with planet-killer weapons immediately." The screen went dark. Juan looked around at his mixed crew. They were all staring at him with hope and fear in equal measure. Hope because someone had finally hurt the Vextai. Fear because they didn't know if these humans were friends or enemies. "The human ships are requesting permission to dock," Nara announced. "Grant it," Juan ordered. "But have security teams standing by. We don't know what we're dealing with." 20 minutes later, Juan stood in Docking Bay 7 with a full honor guard of Drakmor warriors. The gray-skinned soldiers held their weapons ready but not aimed. Whatever these humans were, they had just saved Coalition lives. That earned them a chance to explain themselves. The human ship's airlock opened with a soft hiss. A figure stepped out, and Juan felt his breath catch in his throat. The human looked ordinary, almost boringly so. It walked on 2 legs like many species, had 2 arms and a head with eyes, nose, and mouth in the expected places. Its skin was a light brown color and black hair covered the top of its head. It wore a dark uniform with no decoration except small metal tags on the chest. But there was something in the way it moved that made Juan's instincts scream danger. The human walked with the fluid grace of an apex predator. Its eyes swept the docking bay, taking in every detail, every possible threat. When it looked at the Drakmor guards, it didn't show fear or respect. It simply noted their positions like a hunter counting prey. "Commander Juan, I presume," the human said in perfect galactic standard. Its voice was calm and pleasant, but somehow that made it more unsettling. "I'm Colonel Tejo of the Terran Colonial Marines. Thank you for granting docking permission." 2 more humans stepped out of the ship behind their colonel. One was a female with shorter hair and the same predatory grace. The other was larger, with scars on his face and arms that spoke of many battles. Both moved with the same unsettling confidence as their leader. "This is Captain Yoon, my intelligence officer, and Sergeant Dal, weapons specialist," Colonel Tejo said. "We're here to discuss the tactical situation." "I've never heard of your species," Juan said carefully. "How did you know about our situation here?" Captain Yoon stepped forward. She was smaller than the colonel, but somehow more intimidating. When she smiled, it didn't reach her eyes. "We've been monitoring galactic communications for some time, Commander. The Vextai expansion has been of great interest to Earth's leadership. We've been waiting for the right moment to intervene." "Waiting?" Juan asked. "You've been watching us die for 2 years and waiting?" "Yes," Colonel Tejo replied without any shame. "We needed to study Vextai tactics and technology before engaging them. Rushing into battle without proper intelligence is how civilizations fall." Sergeant Dal spoke for the first time. His voice was deep and rough, like rocks grinding together. "We know everything about their ships, their weapons, their crew psychology, and their command structure. We've been learning while you've been dying." The brutal honesty of that statement made several of the Drakmor guards shift uneasily. These humans talked about death and war like they were discussing the weather. "How many ships do you have?" Juan asked. "In this system?" 3. Colonel Tejo replied. 3 ships against 3,000? Juan couldn't hide his disbelief. "That's suicide," Captain Yoon laughed. It was not a pleasant sound. "Commander, you're thinking like prey. The Vextai have been hunting weak species for so long they've forgotten what real predators look like." "What do you mean?" Nara asked. She had followed Juan to the docking bay and was studying the humans with her psychic abilities. Her tentacles were pale, which meant she was having trouble reading their minds. The species you call Vextai conquered your worlds by being bigger, stronger and more numerous than you, Captain Yoon explained. But humans didn't become the dominant species on Earth by being the biggest or strongest. We became dominant by being smarter, more adaptable, and more ruthless than everything that wanted to kill us. Sergeant Dal pulled a small device from his belt. It looked like a simple metal tube, but when he pressed a button, it unfolded into a weapon unlike anything Juan had ever seen. Multiple barrels, targeting systems, and ammunition feeds created a deadly work of art. "This is a standard infantry rifle," Dal said casually. "It fires depleted uranium rounds at 15% the speed of light. The bullets are designed to punch through Vextai armor and then fragment inside the target." He smiled, showing teeth that looked too sharp, very messy. "But it's not the weapons that make humans dangerous," Colonel Tejo continued. "It's how we think about war. Most species fight to defend territory or protect resources. Humans fight to win, completely and permanently. We don't stop until our enemies can never threaten us again." The station shook as another Vextai barrage hit the shields. Red warning lights flashed throughout the docking bay. But the humans didn't even seem to notice. "Your shields will fail in approximately 4 hours, Captain Yoon observed, checking a device on her wrist. "The Vextai are charging planet-killer weapons. They plan to destroy this station and everyone on it." "We know," Juan said grimly. "That's why we sent our final message to Coalition Command. So they'll know how we died." "You're not going to die today, Commander," Colonel Tejo said with absolute certainty. "We're going to destroy the Vextai fleet." "How?" Juan demanded. "You have 3 ships." The colonel smiled. It was the coldest expression Juan had ever seen on any sentient being's face. "We're going to do what humans do best. We're going to turn their strength against them. Every advantage they think they have will become a weakness. Every instinct that has served them well will lead them into our trap." "What do you need from us?" Juan asked, though he wasn't sure he wanted to know the answer. "Just stay alive for a few more hours," Sergeant Dal replied, "and try not to interfere when the real fighting starts." The way he said real fighting made Juan realize that everything they had experienced so far was just the beginning. The humans hadn't come to help them survive. They had come to teach the galaxy what human war looked like, and judging by the expressions on their faces, it was going to be terrible. Commander Juan stared at the tactical display in disbelief. The human plan was spread out before him in glowing holographic detail, and it looked like something designed by a madman. "You want to do what?" Juan asked, hoping he had misunderstood. Colonel Tejo pointed at the center of the Vextai fleet with casual confidence. "Direct assault on their command ship. We board it, eliminate the command structure, and turn their own weapons against the rest of the fleet." "That's impossible," protested Drakmor Captain Kesh. The gray-skinned warrior had fought the Vextai for 2 years and knew their capabilities. "The command ship is surrounded by 30 escort vessels. It has the best armor in their fleet and 5,000 elite shock troops aboard." "Exactly why they won't expect us to attack it," Captain Yoon replied. She was studying the fleet composition on her portable scanner, with the intensity of a scientist examining bacteria. "The Vextai think defensively. Protect the important assets, overwhelm the enemy with superior numbers." Very predictable. Sergeant Dal was cleaning his rifle with practiced movements. The weapon looked simple compared to Coalition energy guns, but after seeing what it did to Vextai ships, nobody questioned its effectiveness. "Predictable enemies are dead enemies," he said without looking up from his work. Juan felt his 4 hearts racing. The humans were talking about attacking the most heavily defended ship in the enemy fleet, like it was a training exercise. "Even if you could reach the command ship, how would you get inside? Vextai hulls are made of quantum-bonded metal. Nothing can cut through them." "Nothing except this," Lieutenant Reese said from across the briefing room. The human female held up a small device that looked like a metal egg. "Molecular disruptor charge. It creates a temporary weak point in any solid matter at the atomic level." "Temporary?" asked Nara, her purple tentacles twitching nervously. "About 30 seconds, Ree replied cheerfully. "Long enough to get inside if you move fast. And how exactly do you plan to get close enough to use it?" Juan demanded. "The escort ships will destroy you before you get within 1,000 kilometers." The humans exchanged looks. There was something in their expressions that made Juan's skin crawl. It was the look of predators sharing a private joke. "We're not going through their defenses," Colonel Tejo explained. "We're going around them." "Tell me, Commander, What do the Vextai do with enemy dead after a battle? They collect the bodies for processing, Juan said slowly. They use organic matter for their bioweapons program. Exactly. And where do they process these bodies? On their command ships. They have the best medical facilities and... Juan stopped talking as he realized what the humans were suggesting. No, you can't be serious. Dead serious, Sergeant Dal said. And several humans chuckled at what was apparently a joke. Captain Yoon activated her scanner and projected a three-dimensional image of a Vextai corpse recovery ship. These vessels make regular runs between battle sites and the command ship. They're considered non-threatening, so they're only lightly escorted. You want to hide among the dead bodies? Captain Kesh asked in horror. We want to become dead bodies, Colonel Tejo corrected. Temporarily. Human metabolism can be slowed to near-death levels using the right drugs. Heart rate drops to 1 beat per minute. Breathing becomes undetectable. Body temperature falls to match ambient conditions. For how long? Nara whispered. 6 to 8 hours, Lieutenant Ree replied. Long enough to be collected, transported, and delivered directly to the command ship's processing center. Juan felt sick. These humans were planning to drug themselves into a death-like state, let themselves be collected like garbage, and then wake up inside the most heavily defended ship in the Vextai fleet. It was beyond insane. It was monstrous. What if something goes wrong? He asked. What if the drugs don't work properly? What if you don't wake up? Then we die, Sergeant Dal said simply. But the mission continues. That's what soldiers do. The casual way he said it made everyone in the room fall silent. These humans talked about death like it was just another tool to be used. While my team handles the command ship, the rest of our forces will be busy elsewhere, Colonel Tejo continued. We've identified several weaknesses in the Vextai fleet formation. The tactical display changed to show the enemy ships in different colors. Red ships were marked as primary targets, yellow as secondary, and green as low priority. The Vextai use a hierarchical command structure, Captain Yoon explained. Each ship reports to the one above it in a strict chain. If we disrupt that chain at key points, the entire fleet becomes confused and disorganized. How do you disrupt starships? Asked the Coalition weapons officer. Corporal Bach spoke up from where he had been silently studying the display. The human was young-looking but had scars on his hands that suggested extensive combat experience. Cyber warfare. We insert viral programs into their communication systems. The viruses spread from ship to ship, corrupting data and turning their own computers against them. That's impossible, protested Nara. Vextai encryption is unbreakable. The Coalition's best hackers have been trying for years. Your hackers think like prey, Bach replied. They try to sneak around the defenses. We don't sneak. We kick down the front door and burn everything inside. He activated a small device that projected lines of code into the air. To most species it looked like random symbols, but there was something aggressive about the way the code moved, like it was alive and hungry. This is a hunter virus, Bach explained. It doesn't try to hide from security systems. Instead, it turns security systems into more viruses. Every firewall becomes a weapon. Every safety protocol becomes a trap. The harder the Vextai try to stop it, the faster it spreads. And while their computers are eating themselves, Sergeant Dal added, we'll be introducing them to human weapons technology. He gestured, and Lieutenant Ree activated another display. This one showed various human weapons in action. Juan watched in fascination and horror as projectile weapons tore through Vextai armor like paper. Energy weapons that seemed to ignore shields entirely. Explosives that turned enemy ships into expanding clouds of debris. Kinetic weapons, Dal explained, pointing to footage of the projectile guns. Simple physics. Mass times velocity equals penetration. The Vextai have never faced weapons that rely on raw kinetic energy instead of exotic particles. What about their shields? Asked Captain Kesh. Designed to stop energy weapons and deflect charged particles, Lieutenant Ree replied. Useless against solid metal moving at relativistic speeds. Their shields might as well not exist. The display changed to show energy weapons in action. Unlike the bright beams used by Coalition forces, human energy weapons produced invisible pulses that made enemy ships simply stop working. Electromagnetic pulse weapons, Bach explained. They don't destroy targets, they disable them. Every electronic system on the ship dies instantly. Life support, artificial gravity, communications, weapons, everything goes dark. That's efficient, Juan admitted reluctantly. Efficient is the human way of war, Colonel Tejo said.
We don't fight to prove how brave we are or to gain honor.
We fight to eliminate threats permanently and completely. The briefing room fell silent as everyone absorbed what they had heard. The humans weren't just offering to help defend Kepler Station. They were planning to destroy the entire Vextai fleet using tactics that other species would consider impossible or immoral. There's one more thing you should know, Captain Yoon said quietly. This isn't the first time we fought the Vextai. Every alien in the room turned to stare at her. What do you mean? Juan asked. Those missing Vextai scout fleets over the past year, she continued. The ones that just disappeared without sending distress signals? We've been testing our weapons and tactics on them, learning their weaknesses, preparing for this moment. You've been hunting them, Nara whispered. Like the dangerous animals they are, Sergeant Dahl confirmed. And now we're ready for the big hunt. The station shook again as another Vextai barrage hit the failing shields. But for the first time in months, Commander Juan didn't feel helpless. He felt terrified in a completely different way. The humans weren't here to save the coalition. They were here to show the galaxy what happened when you threatened a species that had turned warfare into an art form. And judging by their confidence, the Vextai were about to learn that there were worse things in the universe than being conquered. There were things that hunted conquerors. The human attack began with silence. Commander Juan stood on Kepler Station's command deck, watching his screens show 3,000 Vextai ships surrounding them. The enemy fleet hung in space like a cloud of metal death, their weapons charged and ready to fire. But for the first time in 3 months, they weren't shooting. Sir, we're detecting strange transmissions from the human ships, Communications Officer Nara reported. Her purple tentacles were glowing brighter than usual as she tried to track the signals. They're broadcasting on Vextai military frequencies. What are they saying? Juan asked. Nara's face went pale. It's audio recordings. Vextai voices screaming in pain. Dying soldiers calling for help that never comes. Battle communications from ships being torn apart. The main screen flickered and showed the Vextai command ship. Through its windows, Juan could see the insect-like crew moving frantically between control stations. War Commander Zethkar was visible on the bridge, his multiple arms gesturing wildly as he tried to understand what was happening. The Vextai are demanding to know where these recordings came from. Nara continued. They're asking about missing scout fleets from the past year. And what are the humans answering? Asked Captain Kesh. Nothing. They're just playing more recordings. Different battles, different ships, but always the same result. Vextai forces being systematically destroyed. On the tactical display, Juan watched the enemy fleet's formation begin to waver. Ships that had held perfect positions for months were now moving randomly, their crews confused and frightened. The Vextai had conquered hundreds of worlds by being unstoppable. Hearing their own people scream and die was breaking their confidence. Sir, massive power surge from the human ships. The sensor officer called out. They're activating some kind of jamming system. Suddenly, every communication channel filled with static. But underneath the noise, something else was playing. Laughter. Human laughter, cold and mechanical, mixed with the sound of Vextai ships exploding. Psychological warfare. Juan whispered. He had read about it in military history, but no species had used it for centuries. It was considered too cruel, too inhuman. The Vextai fleet was starting to panic. Ships broke formation as their crews lost nerve. Some vessels fired randomly into space, their gunners jumping at shadows. Others tried to retreat only to crash into their own allies. Sir, we have visual contact with the human assault team, reported the sensor officer. The main screen switched to show a small Vextai corpse recovery ship approaching the enemy command vessel. It looked like any other salvage craft, but Juan knew that inside its cargo hold, 5 human soldiers lay drugged into a death-like state, waiting to wake up in the heart of enemy territory. Are they insane? Muttered Drakmor Captain Kesh. What if the drugs don't work? What if they're discovered? Then they die, said a calm voice behind them. Everyone turned to see Captain Yoon standing in the doorway. The human intelligence officer had remained on Kepler Station to coordinate the attack. Her face showed no emotion as she watched her colleagues voluntarily enter what should be certain death. Doesn't that bother you? Nara asked. Watching your friends risk everything. No, Yoon replied simply. This is what we trained for. What we were born for. Humans don't fear death. We use it. On the screen, the recovery ship was being pulled into the command vessel's docking bay. Juan held his breath, waiting for alarms for weapons fire, for any sign that the plan had failed. But nothing happened. The Vextai treated it like any other routine supply run. Phase 1 complete, Yoon announced, checking her wrist device. Colonel Taeho and his team are inside the enemy flagship. Phase 2 begins now. The human ships around Kepler Station suddenly opened fire, but not at the Vextai fleet. Instead, they launched small projectiles into empty space. The objects spread out and began transmitting powerful signals. "What are those?" Juan asked. "Communication boosters," Yoon explained. "They'll amplify our cyber warfare attacks across the entire enemy fleet." Corporal Bach's voice came through the comm system from one of the human ships. "Beginning viral insertion. Estimated time to full network compromise, 12 minutes. On the tactical display, Juan watched red warning symbols appear throughout the Vextai fleet. One by one, enemy ships began reporting system failures. Communications went down first, then navigation, then weapons control. "How is this possible?" asked the coalition weapons officer. "Vextai computer security is supposed to be unbreakable. Only if you play by their rules," Yoon replied. "Human viruses don't try to sneak past security. They turn security systems into more viruses. Every firewall becomes a weapon pointed at the ship's own crew." The enemy fleet was falling apart. Ships that had maintained perfect formation for months were now drifting helplessly as their computers turned against them. Some vessels fired on their own allies as corrupted targeting systems identified friendly ships as enemies. "Sir, we're receiving a transmission from inside the Vextai command ship," Nara announced excitedly. "Put it through." Colonel Taeho's voice came through the speakers, calm and professional despite being surrounded by thousands of enemies. "Kepler Station, this is Alpha Team. We have successfully infiltrated the target. Beginning elimination of command structure." In the background, Juan could hear the distinctive sound of human weapons firing. The sharp crack of kinetic rounds punching through Vextai armor was followed by alien screams of pain and confusion. "Vextai security forces are responding," Lieutenant Rai reported over the comm. "But they're not used to fighting inside their own ships. Their weapons are too powerful for close-quarters combat." That was true. Vextai energy weapons were designed to destroy enemy starships. Using them inside their own vessel would cause catastrophic damage to critical systems. Meanwhile, human weapons are perfect for this environment, Sergeant Dahl added. His voice was punctuated by more gunfire. "Kinetic rounds punch through armor but don't damage ship systems. We can fight as hard as we want without worrying about blowing ourselves up." The sounds of battle continued to broadcast from the enemy command ship. Juan listened in fascination and horror as the humans systematically fought their way through the vessel's defenders. They moved like ghosts, striking from unexpected directions and disappearing before the enemy could respond. "Bridge secured," Colonel Taeho announced. "War Commander Zethkar has been eliminated. Taking control of fleet communications now." On the main screen, Juan watched the Vextai command ship's lights flicker and change color. Red warning lights switched to blue, then yellow, then started flashing in patterns that hurt to look at. "What are they doing?" Captain Kesh asked. "Turning the enemy's own psychology against them," Yoon explained. "Vextai use color-coded light patterns to communicate emotional states to their crews. The humans are broadcasting fear signals throughout the entire fleet." It was working. On the tactical display, more and more Vextai ships were breaking formation. Some were firing randomly into space. Others were trying to flee, only to be destroyed by their own allies who thought they were traitors. "Sir, massive explosions throughout the enemy fleet," the sensor officer reported. "It looks like ships are self-destructing." "The viruses have reached their ammunition storage systems," Bach explained over the comm. "Corrupted safety protocols are causing sympathetic detonations. The Vextai can't stop their own weapons from exploding." Juan watched in amazement as the 3,000-ship fleet that had held them under siege for months began to tear itself apart. Ships exploded in chains of fire. Others crashed into each other as their navigation systems failed. Still others simply went dark as their computers died completely. "Phase 3 commencing," Colonel Taeho announced from the captured command ship, broadcasting surrender demands to remaining vessels. But the surrender demands weren't what Juan expected. Instead of asking the Vextai to give up, the humans were broadcasting something much more terrifying. "Attention, Vextai forces," Taeho's voice echoed across all frequencies. "This is the human species announcing our presence in this galaxy. You have spent 2 years hunting and killing innocent people. Now you know what it feels like to be prey. The transmission continued with detailed coordinates, not of human territory but of Vextai worlds, home planets, military bases, civilian colonies. Everything was listed with precise locations and recommended attack strategies. "We know where you live," the colonel continued. "We know where your families hide. We know which worlds you value most. Surrender now, or we will visit each of these places and show your people what human warfare looks like." The threat wasn't subtle. The humans weren't offering to accept surrender. They were promising total annihilation if the Vextai didn't give up immediately. It worked. One by one, the surviving enemy ships powered down their weapons and transmitted surrender codes. The great Vextai fleet, terror of the galaxy, was beaten not by superior numbers or better technology, but by superior thinking and absolute ruthlessness, sir. "We're receiving a personal message from War Commander Zethkar," Nara announced. He's begging for mercy." "Put him through," Juan ordered. The screen showed the insect-like Vextai leader, but he looked nothing like the confident predator from before. His multiple eyes were wide with terror and his voice shook as he spoke. "Human commander, please. We surrender completely. Spare our crews. Spare our world." The silence that followed the Vextai surrender was the most beautiful sound Commander Juan had ever heard. For the first time in 3 months, Kepler Station's warning alarms were quiet. The red emergency lights had switched to normal white. Through the command deck windows, he could see the broken remains of what had once been the galaxy's most feared fleet. Floating debris marked where 3,000 warships had once threatened to destroy everything Juan held dear. Now only a few hundred damaged vessels remained, their crews broadcasting surrender signals on every frequency. The rest were either destroyed or drifting dead in space, their systems corrupted by human cyber weapons. "Sir, incoming transmission from Colonel Tejo," Communications Officer Nara announced. Her purple tentacles had stopped their nervous twitching for the first time since the siege began. "Put him through." The main screen showed the interior of the Vextai command ship's bridge. Human soldiers stood guard over captured enemy officers while Colonel Tejo sat in the war commander's chair like he belonged there. The insect-like control stations had been modified with human equipment, and the walls were covered with data streams in Earth languages. "Kepler Station, this is Colonel Tejo reporting mission success. The Vextai command structure has been eliminated. All surviving enemy vessels are under our control. What are your intentions regarding the prisoners?" Juan asked. He had to know if the humans planned to execute their captives. It would tell him a lot about what kind of species Earth had produced. "They'll be released," the colonel replied, "but not unchanged. Captain Yoon has some modifications to make first." The human intelligence officer stepped into view behind Tejo. She was carrying a small device that looked like a medical scanner. "We're installing tracking implants in every Vextai survivor," she explained. "Completely undetectable and impossible to remove. From now on, we'll know where every member of their species goes and what they do." "You're going to spy on an entire species?" asked Drakmore Captain Kesh in amazement. "Monitor," Yoon corrected. "The Vextai have proven they can't be trusted with military power. This way, if they ever try to rebuild their war fleets, we'll know about it immediately." Juan felt a chill run down his spine. The humans weren't just defeating their enemies. They were ensuring that those enemies could never threaten anyone again. It was thorough in a way that made him deeply uncomfortable. "What about their homeworld?" Nara asked. "Will you invade it?" Colonel Tejo shook his head. "No invasion necessary. We've already inserted monitoring systems into their planetary networks. Every communication, every military movement, every government decision will be recorded and analyzed by human intelligence." "How did you manage that?" Juan demanded. "The same way we've been monitoring galactic communications for decades," Captain Yoon replied with a cold smile. "Humans are very good at watching without being seen. We've had agents in every major civilization for the past 50 years. The command deck fell silent as everyone absorbed that information. The humans had been secretly observing galactic society for half a century. They knew everything about every species, every government, every military force. The coalition had been fighting a war while completely unaware that Earth was studying them like laboratory specimens. "Sir, we are detecting hyperspace signatures," the sensor officer announced. "Multiple ships approaching fast." Juan tensed, expecting more enemies. But the ships that emerged from hyperspace were clearly coalition vessels. Centauri cruisers, Drakmore destroyers, and Lumway science ships. The survivors from other battles. drawn by the emergency signals from Kepler Station. "This is Admiral Kang of the Coalition 7th Fleet," came a transmission from the lead ship. "Kepler Station, please respond. We detected massive energy discharges from your location. This is Commander Juan. The Vextai siege has been broken. We have unexpected allies." Within an hour, the Coalition fleet had formed a protective formation around Kepler Station. Admiral Kang himself came aboard to see the impossible sight of defeated Vextai ships. He was an elderly Zenthari with 4 arms that shook slightly as he studied the tactical displays. "I don't understand," the Admiral said for the 5th time. "How did 3 human ships destroy an entire Vextai fleet?" "They didn't destroy it," Juan explained patiently. "They turned it against itself. Used superior tactics and technology to make the enemy defeat themselves. But humans are supposed to be primitive. Our scouts reported that they only achieved faster than light travel recently." Colonel Tejo, who had returned to the station, overheard the comment. "Admiral, your scouts saw what we wanted them to see. Human technology has been more advanced than anything in this galaxy for quite some time. We just chose to stay hidden until we were ready." "Ready for what?" Admiral Kang asked. "To take our place as the galaxy's protectors," Captain Yoon replied. She had spread several data tablets across the briefing room table, each one showing detailed intelligence reports on various species and governments. "The Coalition has been failing because you fight defensively. You react to threats instead of preventing them." "And humans fight differently?" the Admiral asked. "Humans eliminate threats permanently," Sergeant Dal said from where he was cleaning his weapons. "We don't wait for enemies to attack us. We find them first and make sure they can never hurt innocent people." Admiral Kang looked uncomfortable. "That sounds like you're planning to conquer the galaxy yourselves." "Conquer?" Colonel Tejo laughed. "Admiral, humans have no interest in ruling other species. We have our own worlds to manage. But we also won't allow genocidal empires like the Vextai to exist." "What do you propose?" Juan asked, though he suspected he already knew the answer. Captain Yoon activated a holographic display that showed the entire galaxy. Various systems were marked in different colors, representing different threat levels and strategic importance. "The Terran Doctrine," she announced. "Any species that commits genocide, enslaves other races, or threatens galactic stability will face immediate human intervention. We've already identified 17 civilizations that qualify for our attention." The display zoomed in to show those 17 systems. Some were known troublemakers that the Coalition had been unable to stop. Others were apparently peaceful governments that the humans had somehow identified as future threats. "How can you know which species will become dangerous?" Admiral Kang protested. "Pattern analysis," Yoon replied. "We've been studying galactic history for decades. Political movements, economic pressures, social changes. They all follow predictable patterns. We can identify potential threats decades before they actually become dangerous." "And then what?" Nara asked. "Do you destroy them preemptively?" "Only if necessary," Colonel Tejo said. "Most species can be guided toward better choices. Economic pressure, political influence, strategic alliances. Sometimes a few key individuals need to disappear or be replaced. Violence is efficient, but subtlety is often more effective." Juan realized with growing horror that the humans weren't just planning to police the galaxy. They were planning to control it completely, shaping the development of entire civilizations according to their own vision of order. "What gives you the right?" Admiral Kang demanded. "Superior capability," Sergeant Dal replied bluntly. "We're better at warfare than anyone else in the galaxy. That makes us responsible for preventing unnecessary conflicts." "And if species refuse to cooperate with your doctrine?" Captain Kesh asked. The humans exchanged looks. The same cold, predatory expressions that had unsettled Juan during their first meeting. "Then they'll learn what happened to the Vextai," Captain Yoon said simply. A new transmission came through the communication system. It was from the human fleet, but the voice was different. Older, more authoritative. "This is Admiral Park of the Terran Deep Space Fleet. All Coalition vessels. Maintain current positions. We're bringing reinforcements to secure this system." On the tactical display, new contacts appeared. Dozens of them, dropping out of hyperspace in perfect formation. The ships were larger than the 3 vessels that had destroyed the Vextai fleet, and their energy signatures made the station's sensors struggle to get accurate readings. "How many ships do you have?" Juan whispered. "Enough," Colonel Tejo replied. Earth has been preparing for galactic integration for 50 years. We didn't just build a few experimental vessels. We built a fleet capable of enforcing peace across the entire galaxy. Admiral Kang's face had gone pale blue. This is an invasion. No, Captain Yoon corrected. This is evolution. The galaxy has been stuck in a cycle of war and chaos for millennia. Species rise, conquer their neighbors, fall to internal conflict or external enemies, and the cycle begins again. Humans are here to break that cycle permanently. By conquering everyone? Nara asked. By making conquest impossible, Colonel Tejo explained. Any species that tries to build an aggressive military will find their technology mysteriously failing. Any government that oppresses its people will discover that their leaders have sudden changes of heart. Any empire that threatens its neighbors will face economic collapse or strategic disasters. You're talking about controlling billions of sentient beings, Admiral Kang protested. We're talking about preventing those beings from killing.